Okay, in the last video we saw where when you have anything in the denominator, let's just call this 19, my favorite number, 0 over 19, and I'm going to put over here that's also the same thing as 0 divided by 19, we get 0 because 19 times 0 gives you 0. Likewise, anything in the numerator, when you have 0 in the denominator, so 19 divided by 0, another way to see that fraction, well, it doesn't equal anything because 0 times nothing, 0 times, there's nothing you can multiply by to give you 19, so we say that's not equal to anything, so I'm going to get rid of those equal sign and just say that is undefined. Okay, so I've said that twice. It's a big deal. This idea that you can't divide by 0 is such a big deal in math, so I want to emphasize it again. Sometimes students have a hard time remembering which one is which, so as a way to help you remember, in this first case, where is 0? 0 is over, and O looks like a 0, so I'm just going to say it's like that. So 0 over, you get 0 as your answer. Where is 0 in the second case? Well, 0 is under. And under and undefined start with the same letters, so I hope that helps you remember. Okay, I think we've got that. Let's go on. Whoa, we don't want that. Sorry, let me just get rid of this. So, the next thing that I'm going to talk about while I'm erasing, if you will give me that, is something called proper and improper fractions. And I hate the term improper because there's nothing improper about them. But we're all products of grade school where when we have a fraction such as 12 over 5, this was considered improper because the numerator is bigger than the denominator. In other words, you've got more than one there. So just to remind you though, if we want to, we can take 12/5 and change it to a mixed number. Do you remember how to do that? Remember that this means 12 divided by 5, and if we do this, we would put 12 inside here, divided by 5. 5 goes into 12 2 times, with 2 left over. So how we write that division, 5 goes into 12 2 whole times, with how many left over? 2. And that denominator stays the same. Okay. So in this, from now on, nothing improper about that. So you do not, as far as I'm concerned, unless you are asked to find the mixed number, you can leave your answers as a so-called improper fraction. The only thing I will say though, if you get a fraction such as 24/10, you may have to simplify it. So we will get to that in a moment, how you could simplify that, and that would be the same as 12/5. But you'll see it's improper and it's still improper. Okay, the next section that I want to, oh, we still have some stuff here left over. We need a different color, so let's look at something that's my own terminology. So since fractions just represent division, and division's cousin, inverse, the opposite side of the same coin, is multiplication. So I like to think of it that fractions, and the word I use is compatible. Fractions are compatible with multiplication and division because fractions are division, and division and multiplication are just the opposite sides of the same coin. What that means, how that's going to come into it. If we have a fraction, let's start with a very easy fraction. If I asked you to give me an equivalent fractions, in other words, an equivalent fraction is just a fraction that has the same value. Let's take a look at our pizza. Here's 1/2. has the same value, but it has different clothes on. It looks different. Okay? So if I took this pizza and divided it into 6, so what we have in the bottom, 6, to represent that we've divided this pizza into 6 pieces. And how many of them that we're going to get? 1, 2, 3. So 1/2 is the same as 3/6. Now, you're going, okay, that's nothing new. I knew that. But the one thing I'm going to point out at is compatibility. We can take the numerator, and how do we go from 1 to 3? Well, we multiply by 3. And how can we go from 2 to 6? We multiply by 3. So we can do anything with fractions if we multiply the top and the bottom by the same number. Likewise, if we started out with, I'm going to create some space here. If we started out with 3, 6, we still know that's equal to 1/2. You can take that numerator and divide it by 3. And you can do the same thing downstairs, divide it by 3, and you get equivalent fractions. They just look differently. Okay, let's see. I'm going to cover 2 more topics really quickly here. And the one thing is, and you probably know this word, reciprocal. Okay. So reciprocals are just, in terms of multiplication, they're the opposite. For example, the reciprocal of 2/3 is, flip those guys, 3/2. The reciprocal of a negative 4/5, negative 5/4. And I'll talk about that floating negative shortly, but we can just flip them, but if one's negative, the other's negative. So what's the reciprocal of 3? Well, I think you know this. Anytime you have a whole number, you can turn it into a fraction very easily by just throwing it over 1. Then once we do that, it's very easy to see that the reciprocal of 3 is 1/3. And who doesn't have a reciprocal? Well, 0 doesn't have a reciprocal, because if we say put that over 1, flip it, ooh, get rid of that, because that is going to destroy everything. We cannot divide by 0, so 0 has no reciprocal. Okay, and last thing, because I've got just 1 minute here left to go. What happens when you multiply reciprocals? Well, we had 2/3 was a reciprocal, and its reciprocal was 3/2. When we multiply them, you would get 6/6, or 1. Negative 4/5 times a negative 5/4. Multiply them, you would get 20/20, or 1. So when you multiply reciprocals, and I'm going to indicate that by a over b, its reciprocal would be, flip it, b over a over b, ab over ba. You can write that as ab, and anything over itself is 1. And I will see you next when we actually do some multiplying and dividing fractions.